You're standing over a long iron. The ball sits there, small and mean. Your hands go tight. You already know what's coming, that thin, screaming shot that shoots left, or the fat one that dribbles 40 yards and dies. You've been told long irons are the hardest clubs in the bag. I believe that too. For 20 years I believed it. But here's what I found out. Hitting a long iron dead straight is not about strength, and it's not about talent. It's about one small setup secret that the best ball strikers of 100 years ago used without even thinking about it. When I finally understood it, my 3-iron went from my most feared club to the one I trust most under pressure. This is not a swing I bought. It's not a lesson I paid $200 for. It came out of a book written in 1937 by a one-legged golf teacher named Ernest Jones, a man who taught better ball striking with a penknife tied to a handkerchief than most coaches manage with a launch monitor. And I'll show you the exact drill near the end, the one that finally made it click for me on a cold Tuesday morning at my local range when nobody else was around. You already own everything you need to do this. No new clubs, no gadgets, just the irons already sitting in your garage. Now let me back up, because I want you to understand how bad it was for me first. I picked up golf late, in my 40s, and from the very first season, the long irons humiliated me. The 5-iron was shaky. The 4-iron was a coin flip. The 3-iron might as well have been a butter knife. I did what every one of us is told to do. I went to the big shop with the bright lights and the hitting bays, and I let a young fellow sell me a set of game improvement irons with hollow heads and springy faces. Cost me almost $900. And you know what? For about 2 rounds, I thought I'd fixed it. Then the same thin, twisting shots came right back. So I did the next thing they tell you. I replaced my long irons with hybrids. Those big, chunky, rounded clubs they swear are easier to hit. And they are easier, a little. But I noticed something that bothered me. I lost control of the flight. The ball ballooned up high and got shoved around by the wind. I could get it airborne, sure, but I couldn't aim it. I'd traded a hard shot for a soft, floppy, unpredictable one. That's not the same as fixed. Here's the thing, nobody in that shop ever told me. The long iron isn't hard because of the club, it's hard because of what we've been taught to do with our bodies at address. We've been sold a setup that fights the club instead of helping it. And once I understood that, I stopped spending money and started fixing the actual problem. Let me ask you something. When you set up to a long iron, what do you try to do to the ball? Be honest. You try to lift it? You try to help it up in the air? I did it for years without even knowing. That little instinct to scoop the ball skyward is the single biggest reason long irons go sideways, and there's a reason the feeling is so strong. A long iron has very little loft. A 3-iron sits at about 19 or 20 degrees. Compare that to your pitching wedge at 45 or 46 degrees. When you look down at that long, straight face, your brain panics a little. It says, "There's no loft here. I have to make the loft myself." So you hang back on your right side, you flip your wrists at the bottom, and you try to sweep the ball up. And every single time you do that, you add loft the club was never meant to have, and you expose the toe or the heel to the ball, and it squirts offline. Now here's what the old masters knew. You do not lift a long iron. You hit down on it, and the loft of the face does the lifting for you. It sounds backwards. It feels backwards. The first time a good player told me to hit down to make the ball go up, I thought he was pulling my leg. But it's simple physics, and it was written down plainly almost a century ago. Harry Vardon, the man who won 6 British Opens between 1896 and 1914, described the correct iron strike as the ball first, the turf second. Ball first, turf after. That means the club is still traveling downward and forward when it meets the ball, and it clips the grass on the far side, leaving a little scar of a divot in front of where the ball was sitting. That descending blow is what compresses the ball against the face and sends it off low and boring and straight. The lift comes from the grooves in the loft, not from your wrists. I want you to sit with how freeing that is. All those years I was working so hard to help the ball up, and the help was exactly what was ruining the shot. The moment I stopped trying to lift and started trusting the club to do it, the ball came off different. Lower at first, yes, but straight, dead straight. like it was on a wire. But knowing you should hit down and actually doing it are two different animals. And this is where most people quit and go buy another hybrid. Because if you just try to swing down harder, you'll start chopping at the ball and hitting it fat. So how did the old-timers set themselves up to strike ball first every single time without even thinking about it? That's where the real secret lives. And it starts with 3 inches. Ball position. That's it. That's the thing almost nobody gets right, and it's the thing that changed everything for me. Watch the average weekend player set up to a long iron, and you'll see the ball played way up forward, off the front foot, almost where you'd put a driver. They do it because they're trying to catch the ball on the upswing, to sweep it, to help it into the air. And that forward ball position guarantees the club has already passed the bottom of its arc and is swinging up and to the left when it reaches the ball. That's your pull, that's your thin shot, that's your slice when the face hangs open trying to catch up. The old players place the ball differently, and there's a clean logic to it that took me an embarrassingly long time to learn. Percy Boomer, one of the great teaching professionals of the early 20th century, laid it out in his book On Learning Golf from 1942. Boomer taught that the swing has one low point, one place at the bottom of the arc where the club head is closest to the ground, and that low point sits just under your lead armpit, your left armpit for a right-handed player. It doesn't move around. It stays in the same place relative to your body no matter what club you swing. So think about what that means. If the bottom of your swing is always under your lead shoulder, and you want to hit the ball first and the turf second, then the ball has to sit just behind that low point, not off your front foot, behind center. For a long iron, I play it roughly in the middle of my stance, maybe a ball's width forward of dead center. That's it. That small move, from way up front to just back of center, was worth more to me than $900 of new irons. When the ball sits there, the club is still descending when it arrives. Ball first, turf second. The divot appears in front of the ball toward the target, exactly like Vardon said. And the face is square, because it hasn't started swinging up and around yet. Low point control? That's the whole game with long irons, and the equipment industry would much rather sell you a forgiving club than teach you a free adjustment that makes your old clubs work. I remember the exact evening this landed for me. I was at the range with a bucket of balls, frustrated, about ready to sell the long irons entirely, and I just slid the ball back in my stance, from off my front foot to the middle, almost as an act of giving up. First swing, I caught it clean. The strike felt like nothing, like I'd barely touched it, and the ball took off low and hard and never moved off the flag. I stood there almost angry. 20 years. 3 inches. That's all it was. But ball position alone isn't quite enough, because there's a second piece that has to go with it, and if you get this one wrong, you'll slam the club into the ground and quit in disgust. Let me tell you about your hands, because this is where I fooled myself for a long time. Here's the trap. Once you move the ball back in your stance, your hands naturally sit ahead of the ball, closer to the target. That's correct. That's good. That forward lean of the shaft is called shaft lean, and it's what delivers the club down and forward. But your body will try to undo it. At the top of the swing, that old instinct to lift comes roaring back, and your right hand tries to flip the club head past your hands to scoop the ball up. The second you flip, you lose all that shaft lean, you add loft, and you're right back to thin and sideways. So the feeling I had to learn, and it took real reps, was to keep my hands leading the club head through impact. The club head is the last thing to arrive, not the first. The great Scottish and English pros of the 1800s talked about the hands leading the club into the ball, and they weren't using slow-motion video, they were just describing what a pured iron feels like. It feels like you drag the handle through and the head trails behind and catches up right at the ball. Here's a picture that helped me. Imagine you're using the club head to slide the ball forward along the ground before it climbs. You're not scooping under it. You're pressing forward through it, low and long, and letting the loft float it up on its own. When I finally trusted that, the ball flight got that beautiful piercing quality, the flight you see the good players hit, low off the face and then rising gently and holding its line into the wind. Think about what that low, boring, arrow straight long iron would do for your whole game. Ball first, turf second, the divot showing up in front of the ball every single time instead of behind it. That's exactly the ball striking I laid out in full inside my collection, the Complete Strike System. It's a structured 3-volume set built on real mechanics, not tips and not new gear, the setup lean that instantly compresses your irons, the trail arm sequencing nobody shows you, and how to engineer a real divot in front of the ball so you stop guessing at the range and finally hit it pure every time. And you can prove the heart of it to yourself tonight for nothing. Set up to one of your irons, slide the ball back to the middle of your stance, put your hands just ahead of it, and make one slow swing feeling the head brush the ground in front. You'll feel that ball first strike before you've spent a dime. The fastest way to get the books is to scan the QR code right there on your screen, or go to the link in the description or the pinned comment. Every spring the shops get louder and the old truth gets quieter, so having the whole method written down means you fix it once and stop paying to relearn it. And speaking of trusting the loft to lift the ball for you, let me show you what that flight actually turns into. Now, I know exactly what some of you are thinking right now, because I thought it too. You're thinking this all sounds like a lot of range work, a lot of practice you don't have time for, and maybe your back doesn't love the idea of beating balls for an hour. Maybe you're watching this from your armchair thinking, that's fine for a younger man, but I just want to enjoy my Saturday round. I hear you. So I want to tell you something, because the next part was made specifically for you. You do not need a driving range to groove this. You do not need to buy a single thing. You can do the whole drill in your living room tonight, in your socks, with a club you already own, and it will teach your body the feel faster than a bucket of balls ever taught me. Here's how I do it indoors. Take any iron. Set up like normal, but put a small object down where the ball would be. A folded washcloth works. A cheap head cover works. An old coaster works. Now place a second object about 6 inches in front of the first one toward where your imaginary target is. The goal of the drill is dead simple. You make slow, half-length swings, and you try to brush the ground after the first object so your club touches down on the second object, the front one. Not the back one, the front one. That's it. That one drill teaches your body where the low point is supposed to be. Because if you flip and scoop like the old habit wants, you'll hit the back object or the ground behind it every time. But if you keep your hands leading and stay in your forward lean, the club naturally bottoms out in front, right on that second marker. You're training ball first, turf second, without a ball, without a range, without spending a dime. I did this in my kitchen for 2 weeks, 10 minutes a night while the kettle boiled, and it carried straight to the course. And if you want to feel the hands leading, here's a second free one. Grip down on the club and make slow swings with just your lead hand, your left hand for a righty, letting the right hand rest lightly on top. You physically cannot scoop with one hand without the club flopping over, so your body learns to lead with the handle and let the head trail. Percy Boomer students were doing versions of these feels in the 1940s and 1920s. No launch monitor, no app, just repetition of the correct feeling until the wrong one felt strange. So now you've got the setup. Ball back of center, hands ahead, hit down, trust the loft, and you can groove it at home for free. But I promised you something at the start and I haven't given it to you yet. Because there was one last piece. The piece that took my long irons from decent when I'm swinging well to reliable even under pressure, and it came from that one-legged teacher I mentioned, Ernest Jones. And I think it's the most important thing in this entire video. Let me tell you about Ernest Jones, because his story is the reason I trust his method over anything sold in a modern shop. Jones was a promising young English professional before the First World War. Then, in 1916, he was wounded in the fighting and lost his right leg below the knee. Most people would assume that ended his golf. It didn't. Within months of the amputation, standing on one leg, on crutches, he shot a 72. Balanced on a single leg, he broke par. Read that again. A one-legged man shooting even par while the two-legged men around him sprayed it everywhere. That should tell you something profound. If a man can strike the ball beautifully with one leg, then all the leg drive, all the power moves, all the athletic contortions we're sold are not the secret. Jones figured out that the entire golf swing comes down to one thing, and he spent the rest of his life teaching it in a studio in New York, where he gave, by some counts, tens of thousands of lessons over the decades. He wrote it all down in 1937 in a little book called Swing the Clubhead. And here's his secret, the thing that fixed my long irons for good. Jones taught that you must swing the clubhead, not move your body parts. He said the moment you start thinking about your hips, your shoulders, your wrists, your weight shift, you turn one smooth motion into a dozen jerky pieces that fight each other. Instead, he said, feel the weight of the clubhead the whole way and let that weight swing back and through in one unbroken flow, like a pendulum. The body responds to the swinging weight. It doesn't lead it. Now here's the drill he was famous for. The one I did on that cold Tuesday morning when it finally all came together, and it cost you nothing. Jones would take a penknife or a small weight and tie it to the end of a handkerchief or a length of string. Just a weight on a piece of cloth. Then he'd have the student hold the other end and swing the weight back and forth. And here's the magic of it. You cannot force a weight on a string. If you get jerky, if you try to muscle it, the string goes slack and the whole thing collapses. The only way to keep that weight swinging smoothly is to let it lead, to feel it, to swing it in rhythm. The string teaches you what a real swing feels like better than any words can. I made one out of a shoelace and a heavy nut from my toolbox. I stood in the garage and swung that little weight back and forth for 20 minutes, feeling the smooth, unbroken rhythm, the way the weight loaded at the top and released at the bottom all on its own. Then I picked up my 3-iron, and I tried to make the club head feel exactly that heavy and that smooth. Ball back of center, hands leading, and I just swung the head, feeling its weight, instead of hitting at the ball. The strike was pure, not lucky pure, repeatable pure. Ball after ball, that same low, straight, boring flight, the club clipping the turf just in front of the ball, my hands leading the whole way. I wasn't trying to lift it anymore. I wasn't trying to steer it. I was just swinging a weight on the end of a shaft, and the ball happened to be in the way, and the loft did its quiet job of lifting. That's the secret. That's the whole thing that a one-legged man understood in 1937, and that we somehow forgot while we were busy buying hybrids. And I want you to notice why it got forgotten. Because this is the part that quietly makes me angry. There's no money in telling you to swing a shoelace with a nut on it. There's no money in telling you to move the ball back 3 inches. Nobody can put a $900 price tag on ball first, turf second. The whole modern machine of golf is built on selling you a new solution every single spring. A new hollow-headed iron, a new hybrid, a new shaft, a new launch monitor fitting, all promising to fix a problem that a free adjustment and a 10-minute drill already fixed 100 years ago. Ernest Jones taught the truth for decades in a small studio, and Percy Boomer wrote it in a book in 1942, and Harry Vardon showed it before that, and every year the shops get louder and those names get quieter. Let me pull it all together for you so you can walk out and do this the very next time you play. First, the ball position. Move that long iron back to the middle of your stance, roughly a ball's width forward of dead center. Stop playing it off your front foot. That one move puts the bottom of your swing in front of the ball where it belongs. Second, your hands. Let them sit just ahead of the ball at address and keep them leading the club head through impact. The head is the last thing to arrive. You're pressing the handle forward and low through the ball, not scooping under it. Third, and this is the mindset that ties it together, stop trying to lift the ball into the air. Hit down on it and trust the loft to do the lifting. Ball first, turf second, a little divot in front. The lower, more boring flight you get at first is the sign you're doing it right, and within a few swings it starts to rise on its own, straight and steady. And fourth, groove the feel for free. The washcloth drill on your living room floor, brushing the ground in front of the marker, teaches your low point. The weight on a string swing, the one from Ernest Jones, teaches your rhythm and gets you swinging the club head instead of jerking your body. 10 minutes a night by the kettle, and it carries to the course. I think back to the man I was, standing over a 3-iron with sweaty palms. Sure, I just wasn't good enough for the long clubs. Ready to hand my money to anyone in a bright shop who promised an easier way. Nobody was good enough for those clubs the way we were taught to swing them. We were set up to fail, ball too far forward, hands flipping, trying to lift what was never ours to lift. The fix was never for sale. It was sitting in an old book put there by a man who could break par on one leg. Here's what I know now that I wish somebody had told me 20 years ago. The straightest, most satisfying shot in golf. That low, piercing long iron that splits the fairway and holds its line into the wind does not belong to the young or the strong or the people who buy new clubs every year. It belongs to whoever is willing to move the ball back, lead with the hands, and swing the weight of the head. It belonged to your grandfather's era, and it can belong to you this weekend, with the clubs already in your garage and not $1 spent. If you're the kind of person who's tired of being sold a new fix every spring, the kind who figures the old ways usually turn out to be the smart ways, then this method is going to feel like coming home. You don't need the industry's permission to hit it pure. You just need what worked before the industry existed. So let me ask you something, and I really do want your answer. Where do you currently play your long irons in your stance, honestly? Up off your front foot, like most of us were taught? Or have you already been sneaking it back toward the middle? Tell me in the comments. And if you've ever wasted good money on a club that promised to fix your long game and didn't, tell me that too, because I promise you are not alone, and I read every one of these. Leave a comment. This audience is quiet, and I'd love to actually hear from you tonight. Say where you're watching from while you're at it. If any part of this made sense to you, think about joining this little corner of people who'd rather recover the old, honest ways of doing things than keep paying to relearn what our grandfathers already knew. That's what we do here. And next time, I'm going to show you the forgotten pre-shot routine that the great Bobby Jones used before every single swing, a simple 30-second habit that quiets the hands and kills the first tee jitters, and it's even simpler than the weight on a string. You won't want to miss that one. Now go move that ball back 3 inches and feel the difference for yourself. Before you go, one last thing. This video showed you the idea, but inside the Old Ways Almanac, I walk you through the full Ernest Jones setup, right where we just left off. And if something isn't clicking, you can ask me directly. A real person, me, answers you myself. You won't be doing this alone. Folks like you are already in there with us. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen. Cancel anytime. Now that your long irons are flying straight, let's fix the next piece. There's one odd little adjustment that finally gets you taking a clean divot every single time. It's right here, starting now.